You are deep inside a mountain in ancient Iran. The tunnel is held open by pillars cut from the same pale rock you came to remove. Your lamp trembles, the ceiling groans. Then the mountain folds in. More than 2,000 years later, miners entering this place found human bodies dried and preserved by salt. Modern scans revealed broken bones, crushed chests, and injuries consistent with mine collapses. These people did not merely work for salt, some of them died inside it. Today, you can spill the same substance on a table and wipe it away without thinking. So why did ancient humans enter mountains that could bury them alive to bring it home? The answer begins with a correction. Your body needs sodium. But ancient humans did not always need a salt mine. Most of the sodium in your body sits in the fluid outside your cells. It helps control how water moves through you, and the movement of sodium ions is part of the electrical language used by nerves and muscles. Disrupt that balance badly enough, and the brain, the muscles, and circulation can all begin to fail. But your body does not wait passively for disaster. Your kidneys are remarkably good at holding on to sodium. When blood volume or sodium falls, hormones including angiotensin and aldosterone help the kidneys conserve it. Those same signals also act on the brain, increasing thirst and salt appetite. In experiments with animals, sodium depletion can turn intensely salty liquid from unpleasant into irresistible. The brain is not simply choosing a favorite flavor, it is changing the value of salt because the body has detected a shortage. That makes the obvious answer sound simple. Ancient people risked danger because without salt, they died. But that answer has a problem. Humans need sodium, not necessarily a pile of purified white crystals. Foragers could obtain sodium naturally from meat, organs, blood, seafood, plants, water, and mineral-rich soil. Estimates of ancestral and traditional hunter-gatherer diets generally place their salt intake far below modern levels. The human kidney evolved in that low-sodium world and became very efficient at conserving what entered the body. Even today, serious low blood sodium is usually more complicated than forgetting to use a salt shaker. It can involve too much water relative to solute, illness, vomiting, diarrhea, or heavy losses through sweat. Heat and hard physical work can raise sodium losses, but the amount varies enormously. So there was no day when every human suddenly became desperate for table salt. Diets differed, environments differed. Coastal people, hunters, herders, and inland farming communities did not face the same problem. The real question is not why the body needs sodium. It is when concentrated salt became useful enough to justify extraordinary work. One clue was already moving across the landscape on 4 legs. Plant-eating mammals often visit natural mineral licks because inland vegetation can be poor in sodium. Over generations, animals beat paths towards salty springs, exposed rock, and mineral-rich mud. At Hallstatt in the Austrian Alps, researchers think saline sources probably attracted animals first, followed by humans. That does not prove the first humans discovered salt by following animals. Salt dissolves, gets eaten, and leaves very little behind. So archaeology cannot recover one universal moment of discovery. But imagine what animal tracks could reveal. The same deer returning to one patch of ground, licking the earth, then leaving. People could obtain salt from coasts, saline lakes, rock deposits, springs, salty plants, or earth washed with water. Yet finding brine was not the same as owning salt. Water is heavy. A spring stays where it is. Rain can erase exposed crystals. The transformation happened when people learned to remove the water at Poiana Slatine Lunca in what is now Romania. A powerful salt spring rises beside a mound built from repeated human fires. Researchers measured the brine at roughly 6 times the concentration of seawater. The mound of ash, charcoal, and fire-reddened earth stretches about 60 meters long, 25 meters wide, and rises nearly 3 meters. Radiocarbon dates place the earliest exploitation around 6050 to 5500 BC. This was not someone accidentally heating one salty pot. Fires burned there again and again. By evaporating the brine, Neolithic communities could turn an invisible mineral dissolved in water into hard salt that could be carried away. That changed the question completely. A spring could now supply people who lived somewhere else. Salt could be stored, divided, exchanged, and most importantly, it could make other food last longer. Salt preserves food partly by reducing the water available to microbes. It can also pull water from microbial cells and slow their growth. In human terms, that meant a successful hunt no longer had to be eaten before it spoiled. Meat or fish could survive longer, travel farther, and help bridge a lean season. Salt was no longer only a nutrient, it was a way to move food through time. Now the effort made sense. A community was not boiling brine merely to replace a pinch of sodium. It was creating a substance that could protect the value of an entire hunt, support stored supplies, and become useful to neighbors who had no salt source of their own. And once that value existed, humans went after larger deposits. At Hallstatt, established underground salt mining began around 1500 BC. Reaching the high valley meant climbing through a landscape flanked by steep rock and difficult paths. Then the miners went underground with burning wooden splints for light. They broke salt-bearing rock with bronze picks, hauled it with ropes, and carried it in leather sacks. The salt preserved the objects they dropped: pieces of clothing, wooden handles, food scraps, human waste, rope, leather, and the remains of their lighting splints. Together, these are not the traces of occasional collecting. They reveal an organized industry. Above the mine, archaeologists found another clue. Bronze Age wooden tubs used for curing meat date to the 13th and 12th centuries BC. Researchers estimate that each could hold the remains of roughly 150 to 200 pigs. The mountain was not simply producing seasoning. Salt and meat were being combined at a scale large enough to support exchange. Graves at Hallstatt contain objects from across Europe, evidence that this difficult alpine community was connected to a much wider world. But the mountain demanded a price. Salt-bearing rock can deform under pressure, slowly closing empty spaces. Underground chambers can fail. At Chehrābād in Iran, the preserved miners carry the evidence in their bodies. Researchers found multiple fractures, compressed chests, and injuries most consistent with repeated collapses in the ancient mine. The salt preserved the people it killed, and yet mining returned there in different periods. That tells us something important. The danger was not invisible. Communities could see that tunnels collapsed. They entered anyway because the reward reached far beyond one miner's meal. By the first millennium BC, salt production could become a specialized regional system. At Zhongba in central China, archaeologists excavated a mound with more than 12 meters of human-made deposits. Chemical tests on pottery showed that salt was the main product there during the first millennium BC, and production was established before the Qin expansion into Sichuan in 316 BC. Large quantities could move outward from a concentrated source. Food, animals, households, and neighboring communities could depend on that movement. A place with brine, rock salt, fuel, labor, and production knowledge possessed something people elsewhere could not easily replace. That is when a biological need becomes economic power. Not every salt source created a wealthy society, Not every settlement existed because of salt, and archaeology cannot tell us exactly what each person believed the mineral was worth. But the pattern is clear. Once salt became portable, preservative, and exchangeable, controlling it could matter far more than its taste. Then, over thousands of years, the original problem reversed. The brain still contains systems that can make salt feel urgent. The kidneys still conserve sodium, but concentrated salt is no longer trapped in one spring or mountain. It is cheap, transportable, and hidden throughout processed food. The World Health Organization estimates that the global adult average in 2021 was about 11 grams of salt per day, more than twice its recommended limit of less than 5 grams. That does not mean your salt appetite alone controls what you eat. Culture, habit, food processing, and availability all matter. But it does mean an ancient defense against scarcity now operates in a world of abundance. So why did ancient humans risk their lives for salt? Because concentrated salt was more than something the body required. It could replace what harsh work and difficult environments took away. It could preserve a successful hunt. It could turn one spring into a portable resource, connect isolated communities, and give those who controlled production something others needed. The earliest humans probably did not spend every day dying for a salt crystal. The evidence tells a more interesting story. In different places and at different times, people transformed scattered sodium into concentrated leverage, and that leverage became valuable enough to carry across treacherous paths and cut from unstable mountains. The crushed miner in Iran was not chasing flavor. He was inside a system built from biology, preservation, exchange, and power. And the same salt that made the risk worthwhile sealed the evidence around him, waiting for us to ask why.